This is Carl Polachuk, and you're listening to the SMB Community Podcast, produced by and for the Small Biz Thoughts community. We're dedicated to making every IT professional a successful IT professional. Welcome to another SMB Community Podcast. I'm joined today, once again, by Mr. Harry Brelsford, widely known as being from SMB Nation and also 420 MSP. So happy anniversary.
Well, thank you. Yes, just crossed the 1 year mark for the startup 420 MSP. And Carl, you were there. We did an interview literally last April about it.
Well, and it's weird to be off the road because I've enjoyed seeing your new signage and your outfit at the events. And in fact, I remember you asked me to take pictures of your son. Right. So I'm over there taking pictures, and after about the fourth one, he's like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. There we are.
So let's start with just a little bit. What is 420 MSP? And then we'll go into the conference and some other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, boy, how far back to go? Let's just go back to my present adulthood. Let's not talk about high school and college. But what happened, Carl, was when I exited the big data predictive analytics startup 3 some odd years ago in Seattle, then I started researching and really building a business model and my own expertise in the cannabis technology supply chain area and the serious side. And so went to meetups, worked with an ISV in Redmond, a couple of former Microsoft developers who have built a global API that's the glue between the ERP, the point of sale, the supply chain, and then reporting that information dynamically up to the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Control Board and all the other states. Harder than it looks. And so then I started writing the book probably 15, 16 months ago, and How to Be an MSP Vertical Edition, which focuses on the cannabis vertical. And that's what you and I talked about a year ago. So the idea is this, that a managed service provider, MSP or IT pro can build a new vertical practice now more than ever with the world changing so rapidly. And the experience, I hope it's been good for me because Carl, I found a new home and I'm excited again. I felt a little listless for a few years there after Small Business Server, aka SBS, went away. So I found something I'm excited about, and we built a community. I just added it up the other day, 690 members in 1 year of organic growth. And that's separate than the I don't count the SMB Nation number because I insist you literally sign up at our site to be counted as a community member. So we've had good growth, and the idea is we're SMB Nation all over again, a community with resources, events, education, activities for people who are interested in the cannabis vertical as IT pro or MSP. Whew, I think
So, it's interesting to me because when you started this whole discussion of inventory control and ERP and getting it all together and regulation and compliance, it's like, that is any industry. In fact, most industries don't have all the technology that the cannabis industry has.
Yeah.
And you didn't even go into security, signage, all that other stuff. So there's a huge amount of technology. And there's a lot of specialization. So what do you think is the biggest learning curve for people who decide that they want to, pivot from MSP generic to MSP focused on cannabis?
Yeah, I would say as I sit here today, it's the compliance and traceability aspects, which again do impact technology. It's a distant cousin to like HIPAA compliance in the way maybe an MSP would help a customer with that in the healthcare sector, followed by security. And then the taxation stuff, not that we're bookkeepers or accountants, but again, helping the cannabis client keep everything in order so they make sure they pay their taxes and that keeps the doors open. But it's really those 3 areas, Carl. And then after that, it's probably culture. that you need to educate yourself by going to some of the sites I recommend in the book. Well, first of all, reading my book and then going to the sites, because what this industry has in its culture is they're naturally a little paranoid and skeptical of hucksters that are trying to catch this gold rush. And so you really need to know what you're talking about. An example would be labeling. Not that you and I are going to get involved in the finer points of labeling, but the barcode on the label is everything to track in the supply chain. So you need to be conversant to gain credibility, if that makes sense, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's like any other industry. If I start talking to a dentist, he's going to take 30 seconds to realize I'm not a dentist. Right?
Yeah.
I don't speak his language. I don't know anything. Take a second and give us your site. What's the site for the book?
Yeah, 420msp.com.
And so there's a lot of cool technology. Compliance is always our friend, whether it's HIPAA or FINRA or anything else. There's a checklist that has to be built, and it has to be executed flawlessly every time. Otherwise, you're held responsible. Side question, how much is insurance a factor if you're an MSP that's dealing in this industry?
Well, I'd look at it this way. So I'm super good friends with an insurance guy up in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Here's what he did. He sold a traditional insurance business and quite frankly, got in well into the seven figures for his exit. He had built quite a practice. And so he retired young and moved his family to Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Then he got bored. And so now he has started another insurance agency that focuses on the cannabis vertical. And he's doing quite well. I mean, he's a sought after speaker. One day he was in Aspen speaking at a conference some time ago. But the point is we collaborate together. And here's what I would offer is that, yeah, there are unique needs, especially with the Schedule I classification at the federal level and the difficulty in having a traditional banking relationship and things like that. So he's a specialist in this field. He's doing well. The agents are doing well. So it's more, Carl, like maybe when I talk with him, it's more that we're on a common pathway. We're talking about the delivery of professional services, whether it's accounting or insurance or technology. And so we find we have some common experiences. One of his is that the traditional insurance agent sales motion of one email, one call, one written letter, followed by a call, followed by an email, followed by a call. It doesn't work. He said it doesn't work in this industry. And for some of the reasons I told you about culture earlier. So it's much more relationship based and going to events or publishing and virtual events. You get the point.
Right.
We're on a common journey, if that answers your question, but there's not really a lot of crossover between tech and insurance.
Okay. And so you had announced a conference and then basically it pivoted fairly quickly to doing it virtually. And I know that's a pain in the neck, but how is that going?
Well, it's going good. I mean, it's not the same. Here's the deal. It's the 420 MSP Cannabis Tech Conference. It was going to be 2 days in Denver. And we had secured the Denver Opera House, and we were working with being friends and aligning with PAX 8 Wingman 2020. So if you can imagine, we were Monday, Tuesday. They were Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And the hope and desire is that we could help each other message that you could have a whole week in Denver, right? And absolutely no overlap, and the conferences are complimentary. And so that was our hope and desire. And I had chatted with them briefly. Then the first cases in Seattle showed up of COVID-19. And my sister's husband is a career medical doctor, Yale educated, and he works in the Seattle emergency room. And so when I talked to them in late February, and now the science is pretty well known about. I mean, Carl, just this morning I saw there's a transmission, not just between species, but kingdoms. So the human kingdom and the animal kingdom, literally, there are cases of transmission.
Right.
Which,
I've seen this with tigers and different things.
yeah, it makes this extremely dangerous. This is not the flu. So back to the point. I got great advice. I checked my own, wetware as to what I was thinking about it. And we made the call in early February. Quite frankly, before with all due respect, but a lot of conferences in the industry, I wanted to step up. I wanted to make a clear decision with plenty of time for people to respond. And so the format has changed, Carl, that instead of 2 days, it has now become 4 days starting at 4:20 p.m. Pacific time. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, early June. And it's 3 hours a day, because we also looked at how people, and my speakers in particular, they just didn't have a minute to sit 8 hours in a chair and look at a computer screen.
Right. Well, it's interesting, as somebody who has worked a great deal remotely, you know how the remote stuff works. And I know that seems almost simplistic today, but a lot of people, even in our industry, don't have experience with the remote stuff. And, we've been talking about it for 15 years. But you actually, Jenny doesn't even live in Seattle, hasn't for years, right?
Yeah.
So you have a virtual office and have had for many years. You now live in Texas half the year. And, so you literally have nailed the whole remote thing. And I got to say, some of the conferences we've seen so far that were supposed to be live and went remote, they haven't been good.
Yeah, it's a different paradigm. I'll emphasize this about the conference. Here's the deal: is that what we're saying is, come support us. It's our first year now, Carl. Again, admittedly, it's going to be a modest first year, right? Totally managing expectations. I said, let's just do it, right? A little bit like we did in Indianapolis in 2003 with SMB Nation, right? Let's just do it. And then that positions us very well for next year, for year 2, because we will have one under our belt. But more importantly for the attendee, it's really about them, that we're saying now more than ever, this is a chance to get involved in an industry that's moving forward rapidly, while many industries are contracting and moving backwards, and quite frankly, may never recover. For example, Carl, and you know these stories, but you're going to see restaurants that only do takeout now with the different delivery services. They will not reopen with a dining room, the overhead, the staffing and all that. The different delivery services will bring that hill country pizza right to your door. I mean, this is a societal shift. And point is, there's going to be winners and losers, and I would offer the cannabis vertical is going to be a winner moving forward.
So you and I had talked earlier about that you think that there will be an acceleration in the legalization for the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about why that corresponds with what we're going through today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, up until recently, we were on a pathway for 2 to 5 years to be federally legal. The momentum is unstoppable. Even my conservative lawmaker friends understand the taxation possibilities are tremendous, so they can fund their projects. So it is going to happen, and it's going to get off of Schedule I, and the banks are going to have a new client base and so on. That was 2 to 5 years, maybe more. I would offer you can probably cut that time nearly in half, because the cannabis vertical got tagged as an essential service. And once you got that tag with the COVID-19 pandemic, that legitimized the vertical, legitimized the business.
Is that just, I know it was in California.
Yeah.
Is that everywhere, or is it just in a number of states, or the bigger states?
I can't speak to everywhere, so I could not tell you about Vermont or Maine or Massachusetts. Okay, so I can't fully answer the question. I can speak towards Texas and Washington State. Now, in Texas, Washington State, that's real clear. In Texas, last Friday, I chatted with the head lobbyist of the Texas hemp industry, and it's kind of a funny story. He has a weekend home across the border in Louisiana on a bay. And he said, boy, they're shutting down the border in 14 minutes. And I said, well, we can reschedule the interview. And he said he's just going to ride it out in Louisiana. He's just going to stay there. But so he's the man. Okay. Guy's name is Chuck Maines. And he was instrumental, for example, in advising the Dallas City Council and the Dallas Chamber of Commerce in getting the essential services designation for CBD shops. As you know, state of Texas is not adult use legal, but you can have hemp and CBD. And so he was instrumental in that. And he concurred with my layperson's opinion with his educated opinion about the acceleration of legalization. So now you know what I know.
So I guess the follow-up question is, you come from a very businessy background, actual business consulting. Is this economic downturn an actual opportunity for people to shift from one focus to another? As one industry shuts down, automotive or something, for example, I think some people are going to say, well, I'm a little shy to start working in a vertical that can suddenly disappear,
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm also a risk taker. Okay. So that's a key part of the answer, because no, this is not for everybody. And before I directly answer your question, Carl, what we're seeing with the SMB Nation is people are self-selecting themselves out of this opportunity in a nice way, no loss of friendship for religious reasons, risk reasons, ideology reasons, but an equal number are enthusiastically entering the line of work. And so here's what I found in my research and what I know to be true is the dark market for drugs has always been counter-cyclical. Okay. And that, just think back to the 1930s and think back to Prohibition and other epochs in our geologic time frame. And cannabis behaves that way. So industries that do really well, and I've been through a couple of recessions. The one that was really impactful for me was the Alaska oil bust in the mid 80s. And what you saw pawn shops thriving, you saw gun dealers thriving, you saw liquor stores thriving, you saw some other unsavory businesses that I don't care to name on the air thriving. and to some extent, they prey upon addiction. So there's a certain addiction element to a counter-cyclical sector of the economy. THC is actually not addicting, right? Like if you were consuming as an adult and you got deposited on a llama ranch and there was no product available, you don't get the jitters or the withdrawals like alcohol will do if you're an alcoholic, right? I mean, it is not addicting. I think it's up here, it's pleasant and you want to consume, but back on topic. Yes, the cannabis vertical is counter-cyclical, and I would offer for two basic reasons. One is the hoarding that's going on at the dispensaries. California is the best example. One of our analysts said the line went all the way around the block recently.
Wow.
And reason number one, in my opinion, is medical use. So now people are using cannabis, whether THC or CBD, THC perhaps for epilepsy and anxiety and other, if you're a cancer patient, we're talking about suppressing nausea and increasing your appetite, that kind of thing. It does have medical qualities. So number one would be medical use. So Carl, are you going to give up your prescription to a drug that's important to you? In my case, high blood pressure in a recession? No, sir, I'm not. No, sir, I'm not. The other thing would be more along the lines of alcohol. Don't have it in front of me, but my tummy tells me alcohol consumption does not go down in a recession.
Exactly.
For a lot of reasons.
So, at a time when, like right now, today, that I would say we're at this weird point where we can see there's going to be a recession. Like technically, there won't be a recession
we're already
until
in it.
2 quarters down, right?
Yeah.
But all these people have applied for unemployment, and all of the IT professionals are saying, "Look, this will hit us. It hasn't hit us yet. We're just finishing putting people in their home offices and getting them set up with new technology, and so far we've seen a bump out of this. But when it hits our clients and our clients start laying off and start downsizing, then cash is going to be short, and maybe riskiness will be a little short as well. So how do you make that transition in an economic downtime? Do you just assume, there are going to be shops who need us? Somebody's going to be opening shops or adopting new technologies?
Yeah. So think of it this way that, and I'm actually having this talk with my youngest son, Harry. So let's use him as an example to make my point, and then again, I'll hit you head on with the proper answer. But he finishes his degree at Cal Poly next year, a year from now. And we made the choice early on that he's going to go to summer school this year because the employment situation is not overwhelming right now for young people. And Carl, one of the, and by the way, education is counter-cyclical. When we have a dip and people don't have jobs, but there's student loan money available, they go back to college. Now, college is changing because it's going online and yada, yada, yada. But that's what we're investing in with Harry is we're saying, okay, go to summer school, finish a little bit early at Cal Poly and hit the job market in about a year from now. Because Carl, there are no jobs or jobs to our liking versus, the trade-off. I mean, I guess he could be an Amazon Prime delivery driver, but
with his engineering degree.
Yeah. So, the point is right now, and to answer your question, Carl, Dad, you talk too much. No, I don't, son. But with people having free time at home, start at my site, 420 MSP. We're posting up 2 to 3 interviews a week. I have the book available for purchase there. So Carl, you need to invest in yourself immediately. And in that book, I point to other resources, of course. The one that's kind of the granddaddy of them all is the Marijuana Business Daily site, the media company out of Denver. Unbelievable. Spend an hour a day on that thing. I do. In the morning, I read for an hour and learn that from you, Carl. So it's
kind of the Wall Street Journal of the marijuana industry.
Yeah. It's sort of the CNBC, Wall Street Journal, throw in a little CNN in, and you get the picture. It's the big dog. And that's my answer, Carl, is you're going to have to use this transitory period to reinvent yourself. And now that everyone who's listening to this has done that because we went from MS-DOS to NetWare to Windows NT to SBS to cloud.
Right.
So I'm going to offer I've reinvented myself, well, with this new startup 5 times in technology, and now the 6th time.
Well, I do think it's interesting. In the last recession, started, October 2008, let's just say the market crashes. And then for the next couple of years, well, people were not paying much attention. The cloud became mature, right? When that recession was over, all this talk about, oh, maybe we ought to go to the cloud was, hey, we've done it. Like people are now there and we're selling Azure and, and I think that every time you push the reset button, you have the opportunity to create new stuff.
Yeah. And what I'm looking at on my screen, I'm not going to be able to go to it dynamically. I thought I had it open, but basically there was a Mimi, M-E, isn't that called Mimi? No. little humor there. Very little humor, but it had a chart of companies that started in the last recession, 07 through 09 is what the economists say. But you had your Airbnb, I believe. I know you had Uber. So you had these companies that started in a recession. Intel back in the day did, UPS did back in the day. And so, Carl, those companies tend to do very, very well if they can survive the short term, right? Because you learn how to manage your business. You don't fly business class. You don't have a company car. And so herein lies the opportunity too. This is actually the best time to get into this vertical and do it lean and mean and not fat and sassy. And I don't know, man, that like I say, I'm just fired up. And another point I wanted to make before we get too far afield is late last week, Jay McBain revised his 2020 forecast and is over at Forrester and is saying that this downturn, recession, depression, I personally believe it's going to be steep and deep, is shaving $50 billion off the spend in the channel. And so, Carl, there's going to be displacement. And dude, I'm just here to help, okay? I swear, this time I'm not going to profiteer off misery, okay?
Well, it's one of these things where, again, from the business consulting perspective, you want to help as many people as possible to get through this and move on. And I got to say, one of the biggest pieces of advice I would ever give anybody starting any business is delay opening a physical office until you absolutely have to. It is, one of the biggest wastes of money. Now, there's a point when you got a bunch of employees, you do need an office, but you got 2 or 3 employees and you mostly work from home. You don't need that huge expense. And so in some ways, starting this when everybody's quarantined forces you to be lean and mean, forces you to make what under other circumstances is simply a wise decision. Now it's the only decision you have, right? Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a huge thing. And so I do think you're right that starting lean and mean will serve you well because, cash is the most important thing for the next 6 months.
Yeah, let me respond to that. I know we're probably starting to bump up on our time, but I'll respond to that. Last week, our weekly webinar was with Matt Higgins, who's a rotating shark on Shark Tank. And we were talking about a variety of topics, digital marketing in particular, in the COVID-19 pandemic and for MSPs. And but he made a couple of expressions along the way of cash is king. He believes a couple of things, that there's going to be a double dip. So right now, today, the market's up about 1,200 right now. There's a lot of volatility in the Dow, not the best measure, but a lot of volatility. Well, there's going to be a double dip because markets are a little bit emotional despite what you say. So now it's, looking like the curve's flattening and so on. He says, you're driving in the fog, pull over to the side of the road safely and wait in your car. Do not drive in the fog. Wait until the fog lifts and make your investment.
That's actually a good analogy.
Yeah. And he said, it's really about surviving is winning. Okay. He literally thinks it's going to be last man standing when we come out of this. And, combined with Jay McBain's revised forecast, Carl, what I would predict in my past life as a media integration company and a publisher, to some extent my present life, but you are going to see a shakeout in our industry, right? It will truly be a case of last man standing because media companies were already out of favor with Wall Street, don't have the best balance sheets, they don't have the best business models.
Right.
So I don't, let's just assume there's 10 publishers in our space, just pick a number. Carl, that could be 5 coming out of this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, also, in the last recession, I know that somewhere between 25 and 30% of the people on all of our mailing lists simply disappeared. They got jobs, they got bought out, they just walked away, shut the doors and turned off the lights. So, some of that is always the case. again, the whole, Gartner research that, maybe 25% of this industry isn't making money on any given day.
Yeah.
So, that it's one thing to say I'm living off cash flow, but then when the cash flow disappears, then I'm living off nothing. And so, it's no question there are hard times ahead, but, thank you for bringing us the opportunity, and we'll send folks to 420msp.com.
All righty.
Any other final words of wisdom?
Well, just folks, I don't want to be, what was it, the Wheaties commercial or Life cereal commercial, be like Mike. But, to some extent, I try to lead by example, and I mean this in a kind way. So, thank goodness I started 420 MSP a year ago right now. And we're coming up on our first anniversary. We've learned a lot along the way. We built up our site and our community with resources. And so, folks, that's what you need to do right now is it's free to join. Come join us. Get involved immediately. It's going to take a little while to enter the vertical, but there are no jobs out there. And so, it's time to reinvent. Carl, thank you as always for letting me babble incessantly.
Well, and we will, when is the conference?
Yeah, so the conference is June 1 through 4. And again, it's 3 hours a day starting at 4:20 p.m. Pacific each day. So you can get your full workday in realistically and have, 3 hours, hopefully on your sofa, soaking it up, taking notes, that kind of thing. 4-day conference. Thank you.
Very good. Well, maybe with luck, we'll catch up with you right before that conference.
All righty.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you for tuning in to the SMB Community Podcast. If you found this useful, interesting, or fun, please subscribe, share with your friends, and give us a thumbs up on your favorite social media. Please check out the show notes at smbcommunitypodcast.com and give us your feedback.